positives from the pandemic. So I'd be delighted to introduce my panel this morning. It's Seamus Coghlan. Seamus, are you, who is Head of Economic Development in Cork City Council. Sharon Corcoran, I see you there, Director of Economic Development in Cork County Council. Teri Smith, who is the manager of the HBSU division in Enterprise Ireland, which is the startup pipeline for Ireland. And Mike Nolan, who's a partner in Grant Thornton in Cork, primarily in the audit and assurance area. So kicking off, have we got everybody?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So kicking off, what we'll do is to let you each do a quick introduction, and also it's been a tough 9 months, especially at all sectors, and especially in the HBSU pipeline, and also at the city council and county council level. So maybe the critical challenges that you faced, which are quite different from what we face often at a different coalface. So maybe Seamus, you could start.
Good morning, Michael. Listen, and thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. Seamus Coghlan here. I head up the Economic Development Unit in Cork City Council, and we've been a long-time supporter of the Cork Brick entrepreneur experience for the last 10 years, and hopefully our relationship will definitely continue into the future. It's a great program. I suppose the key challenges for us really, and have been, obviously the pandemic has given rise to essentially the lockdown of the city centre, and the closure of all retail and hospitality. Offices closed, people are working from home and so on, like we are today. So this is essentially, has obviously killed off almost the city centre, and our key challenges have been around, look, how do we revitalise and rebuild our city? And that's the key thing that we need to do, thinking about going forward. And in doing so, obviously, we're going to need, a key element of that will be the supports that we're going to need to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. And Sharon, you've got a completely different perspective because you have probably one of the largest counties in Ireland.
Yeah, good morning, Mike, and good morning to fellow panelists. First of all, thanks for the invitation. And like Cork City Council, I suppose Cork County Council has been a long-time supporter of Cork BIC. I think this webinar that you're having this morning is fantastic, because for us to hear firsthand from people like Mary is just, it informs us. We know of the challenges that are out there, but when you hear it firsthand, it really brings it home. And I suppose people like Mary demonstrate the resilience that's out there in the small business community. So thank you for that opportunity, Michael. Yeah, I suppose our challenges are no different really to what Cork City Council faces. Yes, Cork City Council, obviously the city is the main urban centre and a main engine, I suppose, of the whole economy of Cork. But Cork is populated with 23 major towns, and then we have villages also, and they all feed in to the whole economy of the Cork region. So they're all challenged in the same way, particularly the hospitality sector, small restaurants, small pubs, retailers. Obviously the tourism industry has really been knocked for six, I suppose, because they've literally just had their livelihoods taken away from them by this pandemic. So our challenges are very similar, really. It's how do you keep the town centres open in a way that's safe? How do you keep the economy going in as much as you can? How do you distribute the supports that are coming from government? And there have been very generous supports coming from government. I know they'll never be sufficient, they'll never be enough. So we've been challenged to do that in a way that's appropriate. And at the same time, we must recognise that all of these businesses out there, they're our ratepayers. They pay us. They keep us going. We're all in this together. So, it's not a question of, yes, we're public servants. We're paid, as one of your previous speakers said there, we have a salary. But I mean, the challenges are the same for all of us. I think we do empathise with the business community because we need each other. And for me, I think the greatest lesson out of this is that we need each other.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. And Teri, you've got the national perspective, and you're also know and understand the startup game, which many of the 200 or so people on the call today would be intimately involved in. So, Teri.
Yeah, Michael, and thanks very much again to Cork BIC for inviting me on the panel here this morning, and good morning to all the listeners. Yeah, I work in the high potential startup division in Enterprise Ireland, but as people will know, Enterprise Ireland also supports established companies, SMEs broadly, and large companies as well that are indigenous and are export focused. And back in March, I think the pandemic hit everyone across the board. We deal with a lot of small companies on the startup side as well. Companies were severely impacted in terms of ability to do business, engaging with customers, raising funding, etc. And as an organisation, Enterprise Ireland had to, like any small companies, we ourselves had to act fast in terms of making sure that we were set up to support companies to deal with the challenges. So, we were all working remotely, and we have been doing so since March. And I know a lot of our other colleagues as well in local enterprise in a similar situation. So, the challenge has been, making sure that we're relevant for our clients in terms of how we're engaging and working with them. If we can't visit a site, how are we going to manage that? How are we going to meet with companies? So I think technology has really helped us all. It's helped us work internally to come up with new products and services, and we've had to act fast in terms of coming up with additional products and additional services to deal with the new reality. And I think we've set ourselves up now to be to ensure that we are supporting companies right across the board in terms of the appropriate products and services. And to give you an example, International Markets Week is one of our key events of the year, and it's normally done in person, face-to-face meetings with our market advisors. And back in October, we managed to set it up virtually, and over 700 companies had meetings with our market advisors on a virtual platform. And I think that's the message here going forward, that for companies to be able to do business, they need to have that digital capability, and we as an organisation need to make sure that we have all the relevant supports. Finance is very important, but also to have the service supports to enable companies to operate in the current environment. And a lot of our plans going forward are focused on such initiatives.
Fantastic, thank you. And Mike, the advisory perspective, you're dealing with companies in the financial area particularly, but because of audit and assurance and governance. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks again, Michael, for the invite. To be perfectly honest with you, I would kind of say that 80 to 85% of our client base, which is spread across everything from multinationals down to sole traders, is actually fine. There would be, depending on the particular sectors, whether it be hospitality, leisure, arts, they're the challenged industries at the moment, and they're the ones struggling. We would be doing a lot of work with a lot of them in relation to renegotiating their banking, dealing with the revenue in relation to all the various help that the revenue or the state is giving, and other government bodies like Enterprise Ireland, like the IDA, that can help out as well. So there is a challenged area that is struggling but will be okay and just need time. So we're working a lot with those kind of people. Look, when air travel comes back, an awful lot of our tourist and hospitality businesses will all be fine, but in the meantime, a lot of them are under pressure. So we're helping there out a lot, but they're all proving very resilient in relation to how they're getting on. Like, I suppose one of the barometers we'd have, or the KPIs that we'd have in relation to this, would be that we've had no insolvencies, we've had no examinerships, we've had no significantly challenged businesses that are really, really stuck. Okay, it's hard. Nobody is questioning that for certain industries, but nobody has actually gone insolvent yet, which I think is great in comparison to the last recession. Because when this came down in March, everybody put their head into their hands from a professional services perspective, thinking the world is going to end and we're going to have a raft of all this stuff, and it hasn't happened, which is great.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And so maybe, Seamus, you could talk a little bit about the upsides coming down, looking at the future, maybe some of the positives. So we've had some positives already, and in particular, maybe mention the role of the local enterprise office, the LEO,
Sure, Michael. Yeah. I suppose if there are any lessons and insights, I think that we've learned, and I'm sure most people have, is that crisis drives change, and the ability to respond. And I think that capacity to innovate and adapt has been massively evident, and which I think prior to that we wouldn't have been too sure. But I think it has been massively evidenced in terms of what's happened since March, in terms of the responses of both industry and companies of retail and hospitality, and what City Council has done to support that. But again, support is critical here as well, and you know, we can't do it necessarily alone, and particularly in the context of our smaller retailers and hospitality sectors, you know, the support that is you know, while there is I suppose an inclination for, you know, to pivot and change and adapt and think about, you know, how can I make things different to make things work for me, and the supports that are coming from the Leo, I think, are critical in that. And I suppose in terms of the numbers, in terms of since March, we've had significant response, in fairness to Enterprise Ireland, who significantly, they fund the Leos, but the Leos then reach out into the micro sector, which form a significant part of our city centre, and obviously our SME sector. And we've had significant asks, which fortunately has been funded through the trading online vouchers, for example. We've had about 500 of those at about £2,500 a piece, and we've had that new business continuity voucher all set up very quickly, it has to be said, and in fairness to Leo and in fairness to Enterprise Ireland, in terms of providing the additional supports required to deliver on that. This has all happened, and it's equating to about €2 million in terms of that support that has occurred since then, and has happened very quickly. And it doesn't happen overnight. I make the point, there's a huge amount of work to be put in to facilitate the delivery of those grants, getting the applications in and so on. Other things like there's been a massive amount of online training, and also a huge amount of one-to-one mentoring. So these are the key supports that help our SME sector to respond to this pandemic. And I think that there is evidence there to suggest that that they're well capable of doing that. From our own perspective as well, we've had significant support in terms of how do we revitalizing our city, and that has happened as well, as we know, through significant work around the public ground pieces, and encouraging and facilitating retail and hospitality particularly to come onto the streets, which we're all well aware of. And I think this is exemplified mainly by, I suppose, Princess Street, which has featured quite a bit. But thinking about this a couple of years ago, that would we've all thought about trying to do it for many years. The crisis has brought it about such that it has happened. So any obstacles that were in the way were essentially cleared, and it makes the point to think, crisis drives change. It changes the mindset, it clears the dross, and gets on with what's really important. And I think that has been quite evidence there as well. And so we've, and we're doing a lot of work as well now. It's been great during the summer, a decent response, and we're now challenged with, winterizing, as we're calling it, or making it winter friendly, and to attract people onto the streets for Christmas for the retailers. And there's a number of festival and smaller scale festivals and events which we're organising, in a smaller way. Obviously crowds can, it's still a challenge to bring big numbers in, but the idea is to have multiple events at a smaller level to keep people coming into the city in a safe way. And that's one of our, and that's certainly what we're going to be doing for the winter as well.
Thank you, Seamus. Great. And Sharon, and opportunities that you see coming up, that learnings that have happened from COVID.
Okay, I suppose the learnings would be very similar, obviously, to Cork City Council for all local authorities. I think there are two things. First of all, again, I do believe we're all in this together, because if our economy doesn't perform, none of us perform. We need each other, and I think that really has been demonstrated to me and my team during this. But I think what I've really noticed with the SME sector is the absolute resilience that exists out there. Seamus mentioned Princess Street. Yes, you can replicate that all around the county as well. Now, we have put significant funding into developing an infrastructure that will facilitate outdoor dining. It works during the summer. It certainly worked in the autumn. Seamus is right. Winter is a bigger challenge. But like the community have demonstrated, they are willing and able to serve outdoors. And I think we as consumers have demonstrated that we want to eat and drink outdoors if at all possible. So I think certainly going forward, I think that we've pivoted very, very quickly. I think we are going to adopt that culture, and that's probably going to be a healthy culture, because Ireland is a fresh, beautiful country. We should have been using our outdoors to our advantage. During the previous years, you go to any of the Finnish countries or the Scandinavian countries, go to Copenhagen, Sweden, they all eat outdoors during the winter. So I think that's the key, let's say, the key immediate lesson going forward, is that we can do things. We can talk and procrastinate for years, but when a pandemic comes or a major challenge like this, then we can pivot very quickly. I do think as well, I think there is an opportunity going forward, and I'm talking about the tourism now in particular, because as Michael quite rightly said a while ago, there seems to have been a sort of a dual economy working in a way. The FDI sector definitely has, I suppose, has sustained itself and has been quite successful, and the figures show that it hasn't suffered during this pandemic as such. And I suppose that makes sense. That really the tourism sector, it's subject to so many changes. It can quickly pivot, it can quickly adapt. And if we all work together to develop the infrastructure around what the tourist seeks, we can make it happen. We can bring people in. So for example, I think the fact that there was, staycation this year was a word that we were all using, but all you have to do is look at the west of Ireland, from Kinsale in the south right up to Donegal. You couldn't get a hotel or accommodation for the 6-week period from the end of July to August. So I think people have discovered an Ireland that we knew was there, but that we didn't necessarily explore. I think that is an opportunity for us going forward. I think certainly people are going to be more willing to spend more money in Ireland, along obviously with their continental holiday. We do need the sun, but I think we need to capitalise on that. And I think we know that the community out there, particularly those working in tourism and hospitality, they are very willing, very able, very resilient, and they will pivot very quickly. Seamus mentioned a while ago that the funding that has come. Funding has come from central government through Enterprise Ireland with trading online and business continuity vouchers. The Restart grant, we've paid out €27 million in Cork County Council to date. Obviously government funded through the Department of Business to over 4,000 businesses. So, it all adds up. And again, it demonstrates for me what the biggest lesson out of this is that we are literally all in this together.
Thank you, Sharon. And so final comments to both Teri and Michael. Again, maybe 1-2 minutes each, but the opportunities and the upsides that you're seeing now, we're starting to come out of it, we feel. And we've got some great examples in the entrepreneur experience of people resilient with huge capability. So over to you, Teri.
Okay, so Michael, what I would like to point out is that I'm kind of conscious that there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience. Some may be thinking of starting out, others maybe the early stages of setting up a new company. I know from my own point of view in Enterprise Ireland, I work at the early stage side, and work in collaboration with the BICs and the local enterprise. Also involved in managing the Competitive Start Fund. And what I have seen is there's still a lot of interest out there in starting up. There's still a lot of entrepreneurs coming forward, seeing new opportunities that have arisen maybe as a result of COVID. A lot of interest in, digitally driven companies, and the whole e-learning space become very popular as well. So the pandemic has actually thrown out a lot of potential opportunity, and what I have seen is there's great creativity and great positivity out there, and from an agency's point of view, and same for the funding environment, there is still a lot of interest out there for good projects and for good propositions. And what I say to any entrepreneur is, when you're presenting, looking for support and funding, etc., be mindful of, being able to demonstrate how you're going to, manage the business or develop the opportunity in this virtual world. And, there's a lot of support from the BICs, local enterprise and Enterprise Ireland in terms of service supports and financial supports. So I'd encourage anyone to reach out if they're at the very early stage, reach out to local enterprise. And, if they think that they've got a more export driven opportunity that's ready to commercialise, contact Enterprise Ireland. So I think there's a positive message there. There is support out there.
Terry, thank you, appreciate it. And finally, Mike Nolan, just give us 30 seconds because Michael Neary is on next.
Coming up next, yeah, and I don't want to take his
Steal
students.
his time.
Yeah, look, our biggest learning from all this is nothing is location specific anymore, both from our own business and from a client perspective. Across all our clients, it doesn't matter where they are now. It doesn't matter where we are. For 100 years, professional services has been office-based. It's no longer office-based. We can operate across all sorts of platforms. We've got work from all over the world in the last 9 months, which has kind of blown us all away in relation to that. So our biggest learning is that nothing is location specific.
It's customer specific, but not location specific.
Correct.
It's fantastic. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. And